No, I only use that, I must confess. I use that, and I always thank people who, even today, come up to me and say to me, Richard, do you remember when I used to buy a little bolt or silk lining from you, and you used to sing a song for me? And I graciously and joyously always say thanks to them, because I used to use this as a springboard for which to pay for my lessons. You see, Martin, I had no angels, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm very grateful that I could always rely on the little income that I was getting from the silk lining business in the fur trade to pay for my operatic lessons. And I used to study three times a week.
Now, this is an important point that you just raised, the question of continually studying. There are some fairly well-known singers, I would say, and certainly the broad general public, consider that once the career has arrived at a certain stage, further study is superfluous. That's hardly the case, though.
That is not so, and of course, the only thing I could say to that, Martin, and you know plenty of my colleagues, is the law of averages. Who is around today singing who you knew 10 or 15 years ago?
Mm.
And this is something I've never put in print, but people know who are close to me, that whenever I sang at the Metropolitan Opera, I used to run up to Paul Althouse studio on 72nd Street a half hour before I used to arrive at the theater. And people, when they found out about it after the passing of Paul, said to me, why did you have to go to your teacher? Couldn't you vocalize yourself in the room at the Metropolitan Opera? And I say, no. Only reason for that was because of my diversification of roles that I used to sing at the Metropolitan, be it Mozart one night, or a dramatic role like Carmen or Forza del Destino or Gioconda. He would put me into that vein of lyric quality that the role demanded of me that night.
Mm-hmm. Very important lesson there for any aspiring singers who may be watching. Stay with it, and no matter how great a career you arrive at, it always takes constant work and constant study.
And that also, an important point would be, advice to them is not to grow old before their time.
Yes.
In other words, not to assume the dramatic roles when they are at an early age.
You know, one of the most incredible aspects to me of the 29 different roles that you have sung at the Met is that you have broken in every one of them right on the stage. In other words, you didn't play it in the minor leagues firsthand and then go up to the Met, but there you were on the stage of the Met, debuting each one of those roles.
Every one but one, Martin, and that was Turandot, which I sang in Houston, Texas.
Mm-hmm.
But I think this only brings out the confidence that the Metropolitan management had in me as they saw me growing year by year. Every year I used to add 2 major roles to my repertoire, and I was always ready. In other words, timing is the most important factor in a musical life. I think in every endeavor of life. You be prepared when the time comes. We are all eager beavers, but when the management does call you, don't let them down.
Right. I think the role that you've sung perhaps more frequently than any other is Don Jose in Carmen.
Non-Italian.
Yes, yes, for the gentleman who is identified as principally the Italian tenor.
That's correct.
We have a photo which was taken from a first, not only in your career, but in the career of opera in this country, in the life of opera, taken from a closed circuit of the first telecast of opera, Carmen, you and Risa Stevens.
That's right.
And, of course, the career is studded with many firsts. You were the first American tenor to record at La Scala, the first to tour the Orient, maybe even the first one to play baseball in Japan.
That's right. And there was a little nostalgia coming here this morning, Martin, because as I entered the NBC studios, I noticed in front of me the old studio 8H, which I had the pleasure and privilege to sing with Maestro Toscanini, the first telecast in the world of opera, in the opera Aida.
I well remember it. I think it was divided over 2 consecutive Saturday evenings.
That's correct.
Yes. Speaking of firsts, there's a charming story that you told me before we came on the air about you and a cardinal from Holland.
Yes, Martin, that was at the graduation services at Notre Dame University, where I was honored by giving a doctorate of music. And the night before the graduation exercises, there was a dinner held in honor of the recipients of the awards, and I recall we had distinguished people who were receiving awards like Roy Wilkins and the gentleman who was the advisor to President Kennedy, top advisor, whose name just escapes me, George Bundy, excuse me, and other distinguished gentlemen. And as we were having dinner and the Cardinal said grace, as I was about to be seated, he caught my eye and he said, "Oh, just a minute, Mr. Tucker." And he took a piece of bread or roll, broke it in half, and made the Hebrew motzi, Hebrew prayer for the motzi lechem min haaretz, for the prayer for the bread. And this was such an emotional, nostalgic moment for my wife and family who were present, that after dinner, I went up to the Cardinal and I said to him, "Your Eminence, that was a beautiful thought that you did in honor of my family. And I want to repay in some small way that when, God willing, I come to Holland, I want to sing a benefit concert for any of your charities." And he exclaimed immediately, he said, "Mr. Tucker, please, you don't really have to do that, but when are you coming?"
That's a marvelous story.
Well, thank God I've had wonderful relationships with cardinals throughout the world, and also His Eminence the Pope John, when I visited Italy.
You also received, you were the first American to receive Italy's Commendatore